welcome along in this lovely sunny morning to the Police and Fire Subcommittee. Any apologies?
Thank you. We've got one apology this morning from Councillor McCutcheon. Thank you.
Thank you. I think Councillor McCutcheon's busy with the baton relaying this morning. Any declarations of interest? Could we go to item 3, minute of the meeting of 20th of February? Members asked to approve the minute. Yeah. Okay.
That as long as he was involved with the fire services, that Drumore Fire Station wouldn't shut. I'm sure those who were present around the table will remember that, but I don't see it minuted anywhere. Was that not possible to be minuted?
Derek? Yeah.
Okay, is this item 5 that we're referring to?
In the minutes of the previous...
I think it was over the page that part was.
All right.
And I'll tell you where it should have went.
Sorry, Councillor Foster, can you be clear which part of the minute?
Well, it's actually 7.1234. We seem to credit what Partwater said quite a bit within the minutes, but there's no mention of him actually saying that.
Well, I think from recollection he said quite a lot that day.
Does that mean he didn't mean it?
I couldn't possibly. If members feel they would want something noted or added, they're perfectly...
Clear. I mean, I think they recollect them saying that, and I was surprised it wasn't in the minute, because there's something else in the minute as well regarding part one.
Right. Just, was the meeting recorded? Well, you'll have it captured digitally.
Yeah.
Check the recording.
Would you like to go down that route to check the recording, and if it is, we agree to add it to the minute? Is that permanent?
So
Clark, where is that permanent?
So basically you're deferring the approval of the last minute to allow checking of the recording of the previous meeting.
Chair, I don't want to be obtuse. I'd be quite happy if we approved the minutes, but if we do, or somebody listens to the recording and it's on record, that's good enough for me.
Thanks, Graham, because there's another item regarding Pat Waters on the minute as well that I recollect that Marion McCutcheon made a complaint about Mr. Waters' conduct and wanted it recorded as well, which I don't see in the minute as well, whether it's pertinent to put it in the minute, but I think members will remember that Marion did record that at the end of the meeting.
I can certainly check the recording, well, listen to the recording for members, but in the meantime, are members minded to approve the minute as is? But once it's approved, it can't be changed.
Members? Ronnie?
The reason we record things is not everyone can be captured. It's, you know, the best will in the world. For a lot of things that are happening, it's hard to capture the written word. The recording's there for people to go to say, you did say that, as a matter of record, and it's there forever. So procedurally, I think we could agree this because we've got it captured elsewhere.
Is everyone in agreement with that? Right, thank you. Item 4, police performance report. The report provides members with performance information specifically focusing on the objectives set out in the 2013-2014 local policing plan. Kate, could you speak to the report, please?
Thanks, Chair. I'll probably begin by explaining the appendix to the covering report. Last time we met, there was a request that we benchmarked it against what was originally provided as objectives for the police plan for 13-14, and that's how we've presented the figures, which is slightly different from what members have seen before, but it allows us to cover the fourth quarter. I'm not using the term end of year figures because there's some final reckoning probably has been done by now, but these are as accurate as I'm happy to bring to members, but we can't use the term end of year because it hasn't been through that full audit process. So the figures you have in front of you, the oversight is, and as I've reported throughout the year, we have seen a bit of an increase in the groups 1 to 4, so that's violence, sexual crime, dishonesty, and other miscellaneous offences by 1% from the same period last year. In comparison, we have, in comparison to the 13 other divisions across Scotland, the highest detection rate in that category. And the wider 1 to 5, group 5 being some of our proactivity round about it, whilst we have seen a slight reduction in the number of crimes and offences in the same period, again, we are the highest performing division in terms of detection of these types of offences across groups 1 to 5. In terms of killed and seriously injured throughout the year, I have reported the concern I have that while they're killed and seriously injured, total has reduced in comparison to the previous year. The number of people killed has increased, and we'll cover that in more detail. And more importantly, 44 less people were slightly injured, so we're starting to see a decline in those people injured on our roads. In terms of exception reporting, based on the reflection of the police plan, drug-related deaths was one of the areas of business we said we would report on, and we have seen an increase in people losing their lives through the use of drugs across the region this year. I've given you the last 5 years comparison, which I think members will find useful in terms of how it fluctuates, albeit not greatly. And we have got a number of other deaths that we are still currently investigating, which may be attributed to their drug use as well, and I'll report on them as the year goes on to give you a final update on them. In relation to this, probably our greatest concern is that it's not usually one drug, it's a cocktail of drugs, and we see mixtures of alcohol, illegal drugs, and unfortunately prescription drugs that have perhaps been acquired illegally. So we continue to target that area of business. Road policing and road safety, members will remember we had a discussion about that the last meeting, and we look constantly for trends, particularly around those that have been killed on our roads, and 13 people have lost their lives on our roads in the last year. 4 of the incidents involved elderly drivers and 4 are pedestrians, and I think the last time we met we had those incidents we talked about in depth in terms of some of the work we're doing through the Road Safety Partnership to make pedestrians particularly more aware of the risks that they posed when they're walking on our roads, and we've had deaths in a number of the areas across Dumfries and Galloway. That work's still ongoing and it will continue to be ongoing, as is some of the targeted work around other areas of road safety where people are at risk on the roads. Crimes of violence, we saw a rise in them. Last year, the year before 12-13, we saw a significant reduction in the number of what we would consider street robberies. Last year, it rose by 9 reported robberies, so we had a low year the year before, and we have returned to probably the 3-year average prior to that, unfortunately. We've done a lot of work, and we'll come to that in more detail, just around some of the planning we have about dealing with some of those street robberies as we see people's requirement to acquire items or cash from people on the street. And the most concerning one is when they tackle people who are vulnerable. We've seen a reduction in the number of attempted murders that we had on the previous year to date, and we've also seen an increase of 55 serious assaults. If I can reassure members that at least 36 of those related to an audit that I requested be carried out to look at all the assaults across the area to make sure they were correctly categorised. Previously, we had discussions with our local procurator fiscal here, who accepted reports against individuals where it was assault to injury, which you were outlining the injury, and that might be an injury, for instance, a broken nose that previously was not considered to be serious, as in a serious assault. Now there are two categories that the fiscal will accept on, which is common assault and also serious assault. So we had to review all the assault to injuries and we placed them in the correct category. I felt it was appropriate to do it in the last year to make sure that we had a real understanding of where we were with the figures. Hence there was an increase of 36, and also some of the proactivity around our domestic abuse investigations has resulted in a number of historical serious assault cases being brought to light. In terms of crimes of indecency, as I've reported again throughout the year, because of the more proactive approach that we're taking, particularly around domestic violence, and also because victims have indicated to us they feel a lot more confident coming forward to the police and reporting incidents of sexual assault, we've seen a significant rise. Two of those, or one offender particularly, accounted for 50 crimes on their own, which is fairly significant when you see we've seen a rise of 127. In Group 3, crimes of dishonesty, members will be aware that we have been targeted by groups who have chosen to break into, whether it's outside premises like sheds or commercial premises, but also dwelling houses as well across the region. We've seen a slight increase in comparison to the same year in the previous year, and also just a slight reduction of 54% at the end of year. There has been a reduction, though, in the number of dwelling houses last year that were broken into in comparison to the previous year. Whilst it's not overly reassuring, it is a reduction nonetheless that people's private houses were not targeted to the same level. We'll come to some of the work that we're doing this year if we have time, because I'm conscious of members' time this morning. So there, the overview. We then go into the quarterly 4 results, Chair, and if you're happy just to run through it, I'm happy to answer any questions rather than going through the whole document and just explanation, unless you particularly wish me to.
I think the members will be happy with that. Any questions, members?
Thank you, Chair. First of all, I apologise for being slightly late, but I was attending the Queen's Baton rally in Gretna there. Morning, Kate. With regards to the Group 1 to 5 crimes, in your figures here, we have a percentage rise of 60% there on the Group 1 crimes. Now, I appreciate that you've reassessed how you report some of these crimes, and therefore that has added to this figure and obviously increased your percentage rate. But I still have a real concern, Chair, that at area committee yesterday it was reported to us on the area figures. And in some of our wards there was an increase of 600% on these crimes, 200% in many cases throughout Annandale and Eskdale on the different types of crimes that were involved. And again, whilst I appreciate there may be small numbers in respect to the force as a whole, it's still a worrying fact that these crimes are operating at such a speed. Now, again, the only figures that were reported to us at area yesterday was in the reduction side of it was a reduction in the roads crimes, i.e. seat belts, mobile phones, dangerous driving, etc. And there was a real concern to area that manpower and forces are being targeted more towards the road safety side of the issue than some of the other, what we would class as more important crimes within the area. And I appreciate that you may have priorities come down from you above, but they're obviously not working within this area. Again, drugs, detection of drugs was down 75%, I think, in my particular ward. Drugs offences, and this is a serious problem. So I would just like some comment from Kate on that, please. But I do feel that resources are being targeted away from what we would class as the more serious crime rates in our area.
That's good, Kate.
Thanks, Councillor Peacock. I'm going to attempt to reassure you that the rise in Group 1s and Group 2s, they're not all offences that have happened in the last year. A lot of for instance, the Group 2 offences that we see, which are often related to crimes of violence because it's in a domestic setting. If I can tell you that 60% of those last year related to incidents that happened prior to 2012 and were reported to us. So the rise that you're seeing, and I appreciate it would be more helpful if you had the data that I had. The difficulty is trying separating it out into the wards. But what I hope to do is, as the time progresses and we become more sophisticated in terms of what we report to you, is give you some reassurance about what are current rises in, for instance, crimes of violence that are actually happening now, because I think that's the important thing. We want to reduce the level now. We're always going to have a number of historical cases that come forward. And the incident that we spoke to, Annandale and Estill, had offenders that ended up being charged with multiple offences against their partners, for instance, in domestic violence. I certainly know some of the attempted murders related to an individual from Annan, so they weren't current as in the last year. In terms of the resources for road policing, I know we discussed this the last time and your concern about the priority that was given. Whilst I am not put under any pressure to apply resources to one place or another, nor do I apply that to my chief inspectors, and I think it was Stephen Lowther that was at your meeting the other day. They deal with what are your multi-member ward plans. I set the tone for the division, and the division for me is I don't want to be reporting on 13 people losing their lives, particularly if you find out contributory factors are distraction. They would have lived had they been wearing their seatbelt, and we have to try and find the balance between all of these. I probably will not apologise for putting a lot of my resource into tackling people who commit crimes of violence, and that's what we're doing. Yes, we are seeing it going up, but it's not in the context that all those crimes happened last year. It's what was reported last year, and I've been through them, trust me, with a fine-tooth comb to see, is our profile increasing? The answer is no, it's not. It's just we are now actually starting to tackle offenders who would continue to be a scourge in our communities and who will target the vulnerable there, and we're actually starting to deal with them in a much more robust way. I totally accept your point about the drugs in the community. And this year, as we've moved forward, I can tell you we are not in the same place as we were last year, because we are now balancing that resource to make sure there are regular focusing on drug activity in the various communities. Mike will be able to tell you a little bit more detail round about that, but I absolutely accept that last year, as we tried to make a number of adjustments and realign how we were doing our business, that we were not as proactive in some of the drugs arenas as we should have been for communities, but that is not the case this year, that we are most definitely, that is one of my local priorities, that I make sure every Monday morning I'm getting updates or reports about how we're doing to make sure it spreads across all the way from Wigtonshire in the west to Annandale in the east, to make sure that there is regular proactivity, and we're already getting feedback from a lot of the communities that they're seeing that very visible proactivity as we go and target those individuals. Mike, I don't know if there's anything else you want to...
Yeah, I mean, it's a good point. I mean, I can give the name because it's been through the High Court. Ian Thompson was found guilty at the High Court. He's still up for sentencing. He'll probably get life imprisonment. He appeared on an indictment that went over 10 years of There was 9 rapes on it, countless attempt murders and serious assaults. He did that over a 10-year period with some very vulnerable people. So you have all these charges then appear on your crime system. The previous year that hadn't been there in comparison with the last year. And the other point, and there's another individual that's appeared at Dumfries Sheriff Court in the last month who appeared on 6 rape charges and a number of other serious charges, attempt murder, etc. Now, those crimes happened not in the last year, but they're on our figures. And it's an interesting point about the traffic department, and what I would say is, and it's trying to understand the context of it, that last year they had one of the most successful years in terms of drugs seized from the motorway, with some very significant seizures of heroin, one of them over £500,000. So they're out there day in, day out doing the crime stuff as well, stopping people. And Stephen would probably tell you that we've had a spate of housebreakings recently, and it was last week, it was the traffic department that stopped the 2 individuals that appeared at Dumfries Sheriff Court on Monday on petition, who will appear back for full committal on Tuesday coming, and will be appearing on indictments of numerous charges of housebreaking. So that was the traffic department. So yeah, I mean, they're out there, they're doing speeding, they're doing dangerous driving, etc., but they're also there, they're also still part of the team, and they do have some very significant results that they achieve in support too. I mean, I was in Lockerbie, for example. I was out walking my dogs on Sunday night, and there was a housebreaking in Lockerbie. The first car at that housebreaking was the local traffic car. Came off the motorway, and they were there first, and we'll get that cleared. So it's just kind of getting some context round about it.
But again, going back to the drugs one, Councillor Peacock, we have picked it up, and when we meet again, in whatever environment we meet, and give the first quarter of this year, I can assure you there is an improving picture in terms of that, because we do understand the impact it has on the local community.
Craig, do you want to come back on that?
Yes, Chair, thank you. I appreciate that, thank you. And I'd like to say, on the back of that, in defence of the force, the detection rate was very, very good for all these crimes. So, that's well done to the force for that side. But I'm just making a point that is concerning from the public point of view with the figures. As I said, I appreciate that they're small actual increases, but the percentage rate, and these are the things that the press will pick up, and therefore that will go out to the public. So it was just to make that point.
Yeah, thanks, Greg. Ian?
Thank you. Okay, I appreciate your reporting on the divisional figures, but going back to the figures that were reported to the Area Committee 2 weeks, maybe 2 weeks ago today, the figures were reported to the Nithsdale Area Committee. In my own ward in particular, the Abbey ward covers both Nithsdale and Stewartry areas. Now, I asked the question then about are the figures presented for the whole ward or just part of it? The same report would go to Stewartry yesterday. Unfortunately, I had to leave before it was discussed because I was going to ask the same question again. Could you give some clarity on that?
Yes, I can, and it absolutely is the whole area just now. What I've explained to the people who pull the figures off is we're just trying to make sure we absolutely define where those wards finish and the other one starts. But on this occasion, it is the collective Abbey ward. But in future, Councillor, hopefully what we'll be able to do is separate the multi-member wards out, so it'll allow us to then separate Abbey. But unfortunately, the timescale we had, and just making sure about that accuracy part, it was too difficult to do. So therefore, it is the collective Abbey ward. It's not just the Nithsdale one or the Stewartry one.
Thanks, Greg. Run it.
Yeah, I chaired the area committee. We had Chief Inspector Lowther there yesterday, and I think it's fair to say he got well scrutinised. There was a lot of issues, and I can't remember them all off the top of my head, but they'll come through. They'll probably fed back to you. They'll be captured in the minutes anyway. So, but there was one issue that was raised, and I've said I would raise it here on behalf of the area committee. Was the question was asked, with the state of the roads in some parts of the region, and especially in the more minor roads where some of the accidents do happen, we sometimes get fatalities. But the general question was, when you do an investigation and somebody swerved to avoid a pothole or whatever, and maybe it led to an accident, do you feed that to the council so that it's flagged up that there's an issue there? we never, I won't say he was reluctant to answer that, he just said, there probably is, but I'll formally ask it here, because if the council is getting information from yourselves of potentially an accident hotspot because of a pothole, then would that be fair for us to find out? That's my first point, Chair. I've got several things I wanted to say. There was a lot of scrutiny yesterday, but what I did like was the format of the paper, because it broke it down to wards. And I know we could argue about the figures and that, but I want to talk about the big thing. This is a centre committee, and instead of having it broken down ward by ward, that's great for area committees. Here, maybe we should get it Annandale, Eskdale and Nistdale, so we can see if there's any hotspots and do a comparison across the region, so that to scrutinise how you're deploying your resources and hitting hotspots, just to give us an overview. Because I thought the format was very good yesterday, and as I say, we could argue about the detail of that, but I like that format. If that could be then replicated here, so we get an overview, because if you just get Dumfries and Galloway, I don't know if all the crimes in Langham or Gretna, well, it was Gretna because that's where all the crime was, and Lockerbie at the weekend. But seriously, your bigger towns are going to have more crime. We know that. That's a given. The other thing I asked yesterday, Chair, was stop and search was raised. There's a lot of questions on that. And I asked the question because we don't have a complaints subcommittee no more. So we don't know if there's complaints. Historically, if somebody got stopped in the car or got stopped, might not be happy about it, so they complained against the police. And then we'd see them. As you know, we used to have the subcommittee. I asked the question yesterday. Wasn't sure where that sits now nationally. Stephen did try to answer it. He did say one lad that's now in jail was a complaint after stop and search, but it's intelligent lad, so we all know who he was, and I think if the name was mentioned, everybody would say, oh yeah. But in the bigger picture, if there's more stop and searches, then not necessarily there'll be more complaints against the police, but we don't know now. So that's the 3 points I wanted to make. They're more for this committee rather than the area committee, Chair.
Thanks, Ronnie. I know they've piled up a wee bit, Kate, but if you could answer Ronnie's points here.
Forgive me, I've got two of them and come back to the one I've missed. The format, absolutely. I think the reason we didn't do that is because the area committees fell so close to this committee and we were a bit unclear how we were going to go forward with it. So I've absolutely noted your point, and it should be simple enough to do that. And we'll try and work it round about the timings. So what you're seeing is a consistency of approach. So you'll see it, the collective figure, and then the area committee figures, if that would help as well, just to give you an idea where the full picture is. I'll have to make sure my counting's absolutely right, because I know members will count. Stop and search. Stop and search effectively is almost an agenda item on its own within the SPA, and one of the discussions they always have is about the level of complaints given the amount of visibility it has. Stephen's absolutely right. We've had one complaint over the year from an individual who later withdrew it, and when it was explained to him why, and there was actually confirmation of why he'd been stopped and searched. So we do keep a check on it locally. So as Divisional Commander, I would see that. And probably as part of the figures, whilst I may choose not to write it in this report, if members are happy, I can give you feedback when we're talking about stop and search as to the number of complaints in numerical value, just in terms of where it is, but it's scrutinised through the SPA, and the Deputy Chief Constable, Neil Richardson, has responsibility for oversight of all those complaints, so we have to report into them when they're resolved as well. So it's just going to a slightly different place, but it still will be reported, and because it is basically a standing agenda item, stop and search, comes with that is the public reaction, and that would include any confidence issues or any complaints. And I forgot the third one, forgive me.
The potholes.
First one. Yes, the answer very simply is yes. And in fact, when officers are out on their patrols, they will also, if they happen to be on a road and there's something significant, they responsibly contact the council and make them aware of it, particularly where it's starting to break away. at some point, I would like to get to the point of where it looks like it's starting to fragment. We're notifying them, but as you'll appreciate at the moment, with some of the roads, just the state of repair, we're actually reporting the main potholes. But given that they are, potential to contribute to accidents, that's exactly why we're reporting them in.
Okay, right.
That begs the question maybe for Derek or somebody else to say, we never see, I know the answer to this, but I'll ask it anyway. You probably say, well, there's legalistic stuff because it's insurance claims and all that sort of stuff. But if there's data held by the council that police feed in, that might help the process of identifying priorities for the road repairs. We have no sight of that. And that's, I can almost guess what you might say, but if you could answer that, Derek.
Thank you, Chairman. No, I think Councillor Ogilvie makes a very valid point. In the first instance, what we've obviously been made aware of today formally is that in fact the police have effective liaison with the council, and therefore we're in a position where we do identify a pothole that I would expect that therefore that's taken seriously. What this committee needs to be assured of is that in fact that is the case, and I can assure you out with today's meeting I'll come back to members to indicate what in fact happens when that data is received, and look into what possibilities are available for making that available to members on a routine basis. So if you allow us to do that, we'll certainly take the point. It's well made. We've got a council priority around community safety. We work in partnership with colleagues in police. The fact that we've heard today that there is that arrangement in place, I think, is reassuring for the members of the committee, but clearly what your point also raises is just in fact how effectively we respond to that, and it might be helpful for members to have that assurance as well. So I'll take that point on board. Thank you.
If I could just add a wee bit onto that and sort of elaborate it from potholes, there's also a problem with flooding. We have large areas that flood on one side of the road. And when you have that water sitting for a length of time, when it comes night time, cars are jutting away out and causing the same problem. So that's also a problem as well when we had particular episodes of flooding there that I was getting a wee bit anxious that I could see cars coming the other way and jutting out. So it's the flooding situations as well. Any other members?
Thank you, Chair. I suppose just on the back of that point for clarity, would that include data that had come to light as a result of an accident report, or would it, as Kate was touching on there, just if officers see a potential issue that could be a risk in future, then that's notified to the council, because there's two slightly different things there.
No, I think that's a fair point, Councillor Thompson, and therefore we'll look at the full position. That seems more than reasonable to do so, so I'll take on board both considerations.
Sorry, my actual question though was going to be about, on Tuesday at the Council Community and Customer Services Committee, we agreed to a policy regarding no cold calling zones. And obviously that's a policy, but there was no sort of budget attached to that. But obviously we're working in, that's a sort of partnership arrangement, and it was just really to ask at this committee what sort of support, financially or otherwise, the police would be prepared to put in that as one of the partners.
Do you know, we've got a saying in the police, no surprises, and you kind of caught me out there. The simple answer just now is I don't know, Councillor Thompson. I'll go away and have a look at that to see if there is any. And normally what we do is say we'll provide it with resource or any other kind of resourcing issues we need to do that we can do without actually visible policing, whether it's signs and postage or whatever. But I'll come back to you with that and ask that question.
Okay, Stephen. Graham?
Thanks, Chair. I've asked this question before, and I'm going to ask it again because I haven't had an answer yet. I've asked it twice, in fact, once at area and once with your good self. Camera speeding offences, where are they reported? Because they're not reported in the figures that we get to us, and they haven't been reported to. Could you tell me, please? Oh, shut up. There's more than me gets caught.
I didn't hear the answer Councillor Blake gave, but I would agree. It's reported up through, there's a safety camera partnership centralised up through Edinburgh, so it's actually reported in at the top end into either the SPA or through the governance arrangements around safety camera partnership. I don't think we have reported it in here before, Councillor, and I'm certainly not given any figures, and nor are any of the other divisional commanders, but I can certainly pose some of the questions. But I do know it goes through a different governance because they have a responsibility to report it up through their line management into the centralised safety camera partnership across, that's a national body as opposed to it being the local body.
Can I just come back on that, John? So you don't actually, local area, Dumfries and Galloway Police Division do not get those figures. You get the figures for the ones that are caught by your traffic police, but not by the cameras. So that doesn't seem to add up to me, but...
Councillor, it's not that I don't get, I've not asked the question about getting them, but I can find out for you and probably give you an email response just back to that once we do that. But it's not been asked before. It wasn't asked in previous times either, unless it was a specific issue that we were covering that we'd provide that detail. So even in Mr. Shearer's time, I know that those figures were not included in the data that came to this committee.
Thanks. Just one comment to make. If they're going to start and report roads that are fragmenting, they'll be closing the A75 very soon because it's going to break up altogether.
There's similar problems in the A76, but I had 3 different roadworks this morning, so there is improvements happening there, right?
The same with Prestonfield Road. Anyway, I don't want to be parochial. Just on the safety camera, I remember Stuart Hamilton, when he was involved, coming around the area committees with statistics, money raised, people, and people got the option of getting training, improve their behaviours. So we used to get, not in here, you're right, but we got the information through area committees. Now, it's still happened for a wee while, but we used to get that sort of information. So it must be there. I know it's national now, but we used to get them because it used to be. I remember when they put the camera in Easter eggs, when they just changed the 30 mile an hour, put it out a wee bit, and they caught about 84 folk in a day heading out of Easter eggs. And the safety issue wasn't there, it was round about the school. And there was a huge, I think Councillor Marshall kicked up, and along with the community, and so it was addressed. But them statistics were there then because they told us we've got 84 folk speeding, between 30 and 40 going out of the town. So, there is a way of getting them locally, yeah.
You're right, Craig, and then Stephen.
Thank you, Chair. I appreciate that this is an operational matter, but I just wondered, Kate, if you could throw some light on the reasoning between the swap about of Inspectors McKnight and Inspectors Kerr in Annandale and Eskdale, the area commands. They've been changed from positions, and I just wondered why, when they seem to be working well within those positions and finding their feet within the communities there. And just really on the back of that, I mean, the first that I as a councillor was aware of that was when I turned up at a meeting and Inspector Kerr came and said that I'm the area commander for Annan, whereas previously I'd always dealt with Inspector McKnight. So it's an operational matter, yes, but if we could have an explanation.
First of all, and I think Chief Inspector Lowther explained, a meeting had been called with the councillors, I think, on the 1st of April, but unfortunately through other commitments, I won't rehearse that again. And we would have explained there. And in some respects, I probably don't want to go into it in detail because it was as much about balancing personal reasons as well as operational reasons. But be assured that we don't do those lightly. We have to think long and hard about it because we know the impact on it, and what we felt with changing the Graham and Gordon around was they're still both within Annandale and Eskdale. They cover for each other in each other's absence, and it seemed to be a way of actually managing that very point you make, that they are still within the local area, albeit not necessarily they're in opposing towns effectively, but they work well together. But it was for reasons that unfortunately I wouldn't like to cover in this meeting, but I didn't make the decision lightly. And but I think the point was made, yes, we should maybe signpost when we're having meetings as well, that we need to speak to you, and it was be one of those conversations we probably wouldn't want to put in an email, nor would we want to make it on the phone. So we will probably alert you to some of the thinking round about it in a bit clearer way. But so I think that answers the question.
Stephen, you're on it.
Thank you. It's just sort of tying onto the community, the camera safety partnership, and I suppose when you're looking at proceeds of crime, and I know this is very loosely connected, and a wee bit of clarity might help, but obviously there'll be some kind of potential revenue generated as a result of camera action in Dumfries and Galloway, and I was just wondering, is that maybe an avenue that could be reported back in terms of how much was generated in terms of like fines, if you like, as a result of cameras catching speeding cars as well, even though it's reported through the centre, but would that be sort of reallocated locally?
For the first time ever, I'm going to have to say I don't know, but I can ask, because I'm not sure what they would be put out into the public domain or what's out there already, but I can find out for you, Councillor, and come back to you and say if that's a way of doing it. I'm sure that they would, but I don't know the answer at the moment as to what they would use that finance for.
Okay, run it.
Just to go back, Chief Inspector Lawler did politely kick us up the bum. He did have a meeting. Only one person turned up out of the 12. It was on our insistence we had these, so we could talk about things that are not in the public domain. Purely in my defence, I was in Manchester and I put my apologies in early. I don't know about the others, I can't speak for them, so I took it on the chin. But no, I think that's the mechanism for us to talk Turkey, if you like, because there's the stuff that we hear, we want to share with you, that so it's a good format, but we must make it happen ourselves. So I take it on board, your criticism.
Okay. Other members' questions? I could just make a couple of points myself. Kate. On the drugs issue, we've seen more and more these coming into the more rural locations, and a problem we never used to have. Part of that with some of the rural locations, we've got houses, so we're getting people that are coming from the bigger towns and cities that are escaping from there because of incidents that have happened because they've got a drugs issue. On these figures, I know myself that 2 or 3 local people in my area died because of drugs-related issues. Do you still see a trend of the rural locations having more and more issues with drugs?
I don't want to get into the definition of trend with statisticians, but I think what we can say is it is no longer just about being in the bigger areas of population, that what we're seeing are people either moving to those areas but have really challenging drug addictions or alcohol addictions, and they're now moving out to different areas to try and chase them away, the demons away. I think some of them are managing, but I think quite a few are not actually managing it and they succumb again. But we're not seeing it solely in what I would consider the bigger towns across, solely in the bigger towns of Dumfries, Stranraer and Annan. I think what we're seeing is it actually spreads across all of the area commands. So that's why there is activity in each of them, so that we pick up a clearer picture of the individuals who are, to put it emotively, peddling that misery, because they're prepared to travel, they are prepared to get into, and once they get a grip hold of an area, what we have to do is actually get them out of the area so that more of our local communities don't succumb to that addiction.
I think that's how it's important that we work in partnership with our RSLs, and sometimes I think that they should have a bigger role in supporting us in that. Just another one on the data, the community safety partnership, on the road safety partnership. An officer suggested that it's really difficult now having data because previously the people that had collated that data for them have now left, either retired or moved on. Do you see a difficulty in that coming forward? Because when we're working with the likes of the A76 Action Group and that, it's important to have these statistics. and I think they're having difficulty in collating them because of staffing. Have you noticed that, Kate?
I think it's always challenging when you change the approach, and we've probably had a year of some real challenges as we adapt from where we were into the new figure. But what it'll allow us to do is perhaps be a lot clearer in our tasking of that information. So whilst it's a bit challenging just now, we just need to make sure that when we are asking for the information from the people who can provide that analytical data, we're doing it, we understand what we're asking for. We're not asking them for a mountain of information that we're never going to use, but it's very specific. So the likes of the A76, what we can do is put in a specific request asking for that data, but we have to be really clear what we're asking for, because you can imagine these people are very, very busy. They're not just looking at one area, and for instance, roads policing and crash stats, they're covering the whole of Scotland, because we've got a clearer picture now about where the greatest risk areas are and what we're doing and what's working in some areas that we can try and steal their ideas. So I think we just have to be really, really clear about what we're asking for, but I think it'll improve again. You know, we've probably just had a bit of a dip, but it'll improve again.
Thanks, Kate. Members can go to recommendations. Members are asked to scrutinise policing performance for the periods outlined as detailed in sections 5, 6 and Appendix A. Agreed? Runner?
And just to ask the clerk, she's captured some of the points that Derek's mentioned and others have mentioned.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks, Claire. Item 5, Scottish Fire and Rescue Service Draft Public Performance Report 2013-14. The draft public performance report has been produced to advise members of performance against key targets and indicators, including the achievement of objectives set out in the interim local plan 2013 and 14. To speak to the report, Alan Fairbairn. I think this is your first real report, Alan, so welcome to come in.
As Chair, thank you very much, and thanks. That's my first attendance at this committee, and I'm looking forward to working with all your elected members. This public performance report is given in draft format in order to seek permission for your approval for the committee to finally publish it for public consumption. Now, this type of report isn't necessarily replicated across other areas and districts in the Scottish Fire and Rescue Service, but we took the decision locally to continue with this type of reporting, in addition to the quarterly performance reports, which members will continue to receive. The rationale for that is that not only is it giving performance indicators and mitigating factors underneath that, but it also gives members of the public and their communities an indication of the preventative measures, the partnership methods and approaches being taken. The plan, the report is structured to mirror the performance structure. It's presented in the local plan for the interim plan for 2013-14. It looks at 4 key areas: service delivery, risk management, workforce management and resource management. The main body of the report consists of each section, and each section comprises an introduction, a record of our performance against the objectives set in the local interim plan, and trends and key performance indicators. It also gives a summary of service activity. One thing I would like the committee to note, that I have to recognise that, and it is worthy of note, that given the changing dimensions in the fire and rescue service, that the trajectory and the performance indicators are all on a mostly improving trajectory, which is impressive in anyone's eyes, I would say, given that there is a degree of uncertainty and that we are in a changing environment as an organisation. So, without going into the detail, I'm sure that members have had the chance to go through the document, and if there's any questions, I'd quite happily take them.
Members? Ian?
Thank you, Chairman. I brought this up both at the Industrial Area Committee and at the Stewardship Area Committee yesterday. I appreciate the figures are all on the trend is positive, but my point is that I think the target figures are set artificially high. There are 20 categories there, 11 of them, many of them haven't, these figures have never been achieved since 2010, 2011. Which will also obviously show a very positive aspect to this. I really think that these target figures should be based on local statistics and not taken from the national picture that they are doing. And I think a bit later on, when we get to recommendations, I would like to add a recommendation to that part. But I would appreciate your comments. I have one other thing to come back on, but this is all regarding the statistics.
Yeah.
Thank you. Absolutely, but I'd like you to understand that this report is based on an interim plan that was put in place for 2013-2014 as an interim plan for that year, for the first year of the new service. We're now into 2014-2017 3-year plan, which will again have the key priority areas for the service in the local area. Whether we actually go down the route of targets, now I know that in the fire framework there is performance targets being set for the national organisation. Whether they translate directly to individual areas is uncertain at the moment, and I would rather see that we move towards trend lines and an improving picture as opposed to certain specific targets. As you're aware, and I'm sure you understand, targets can be very difficult to, first of all, define, to secondly influence, if it may be a multi-agency as an approach. We may have no influence on any certain targets. So targets per se can be difficult, not only in defining them and achieving them, but actually who would respond to them.
If I could come back to you on that. To be a bit specific, if you go to page 29, the very first one, fires, it's set at 528. It's actually, if you look at the performance on from 2012 to 2013, it's actually it's an upward trend. So that would actually show red if you were doing it that way. It was way back to 2010 before the figure was at 664, which actually exceeded the target. Normally, any organisation that sets targets, they try to set achievable targets, but targets that are going to increase performance. I would suggest that there can quite a number of these targets are not set to increase performance. They're actually set artificially high. But I don't think it's a local matter. I think it's because it's been based on national targets. I think they should be really targeted, bad use of the word, targeted to local needs.
Sorry, could you just maybe go through that part again? Sorry.
Certainly. Page 29, the target is 528, and the fires were 498, which showed you achieved the target. You were performing. You were reducing the number of fires, I should say. But if you look right across the board, that target was set at 528. It was way back in 2010 before that figure was ever there. 2012 was 468, 2011 528. So the target was set higher than the number you've ever had.
Chair and Councillor, because I wasn't aware of this last year, and I haven't been involved in the area since last year, could I defer to my colleague?
Thank you, Councillor. The targets that are set are based on the performance over the previous 5-year average. So it was to smooth out a lot of quite severe fluctuations on a quarterly or an annual basis. So the 528 target is based on the previous 5 years' figures, so that we could identify a 5-year trend. So what you're actually seeing there is a reduction in the previous 5-year trend. So you will get years where previously we had a particularly good performance, but rather than set the target annually on the back of each year's performance, we set it as a 5-year average to smooth that out, if that makes sense.
I think I see where you're coming from. Although if you go down a bit to incidents attended, where it's set at, I mean, I appreciate this, it's a very difficult one for you to control anyway. You attend an incident when you're called to, but the target figure being 1,500, I think if you added the 5 together and divided it by 5, that wouldn't come out at 1,500.
I think what's missing here is the 2008-9 figure, which if you added that onto the previous 4, not including the 2013-14, I'd like to think that it probably would.
Ian, would you want to come back on another matter?
Yes, it's just one other part, page 42. It's your staffing level, hold time, the total of 98. My recollection that fairly recently the total was somewhere around 130. Could you maybe comment on that? I appreciate it'll be a difficult one for you to do, you've been new to them.
It is a really difficult one for me at this moment in time to give that, because I don't have the figures to hand. All I could say is that if you want that level of information, Councillor, I can get back to you on it.
Yeah, I would appreciate that if you could come back to that and where the losses have been.
I'll do that.
Give that, any members? Run it.
It was a question that was raised yesterday. Because you're looking at the figures on for 42, it's quite obvious that we rely heavily on retained firefighters. And I remember, not being part of the committee, but just remember reading stuff in the press many years ago that there was a target set for call-out times. You know, you try to achieve a 3-minute, 4-minute to muster and get the appliance on its way. I mean, I live right near the fire station in Annan, so, you know, I know how quick the lads can get there if they don't break the law. Sorry, that's just a joke. But is there a national target on call-out times for retained fire service? You know, to muster and get the appliance on the road to whatever incident?
There's no national call-out times, because call-out times were under the previous legislation. They were changed a bit when it was the standards of fire cover were amended and we moved towards an integrated risk management plan quite a number of years ago now. Each service area was required to firstly carry out a strategic assessment. Is its appliances, is its stations in the correct places? And on that basis, after those determination and that analysis had done, each service would have been required to determine whether their stations were in the right place, the rate of attack was sufficient for the local risk profile, and the numbers of staffing were in place as well. So that would have been the case. At the moment in time, there's no standards or no recognised timescales where appliances have to attend by.
Just to follow on from what Ian was saying, there used to be staffing levels, you know. You rely on the retained staff, it's volunteers and that, and getting their companies to let them go. I just wondered, because this is a generic figure, are we managing to man up? I mean, there's obviously the question that Ian asked about the full-time fire officers, but in the retained as well, there was some sort of deficits across the region, if that's the right terminology, where you're looking for more volunteers. We don't seem to get that information now, so we don't know if that figure is a figure or there's a few vacancies there, you know, and parts of the region that you might want to get volunteers.
Thank you, Councillor. As you'll be aware, the retained and retaining the retained has been a difficult problem for UK fire services for probably the best part of more than a decade now. The moving communities, the industrialisation of towns or the deindustrialisation of some towns has meant that local communities which were served by people working and living in the towns, where we could tap into that resource in order to provide our retained fire service crews, has now moved away, and it's been a difficult challenge for the UK fire service, let alone the Scottish service, for a number of years now. We've tried different approaches, we've tried innovative approaches to targeting, to rotas, being part-time, dual contracts. So all those things have been tested and tried out and are still underway. But I would like to advise the committee and yourself that nationally and Scottish Fire Service is taking a proactive approach to this. It's taking the opportunity of being a national organisation to actually look at the whole issue of retained fire cover, because we realise how important it is towards our resources and the cover and the service that they provide our local communities. So the whole nature of part-time fire service work and retained fire service in particular has been looked at across the board, from the conditions of service, the risk profile, the level of training that is required. A fundamental review of that service provision is underway as we speak.
Craig?
Thank you, Chair. Just a thought about on performance indicators regarding other incidents, and obviously there's a red warning to that, and following on, of course, the other incident casualties that we have there. 160 compared to 119 as a target figure. I just wonder, Chair, if you move on to page 40, and we have a breakdown of those other incidents in the pie chart there, we see from that 41% of those other incidents are flooding issues, and there's 65, according to the text there, 65 flooding issues within these figures. I wonder if because of the high intensity of that, whether we should have a separate indicator on the flooding issues that we have and the incidents that the brigade are called out to because of that. We all realise that it's an increasing problem over the years, and it will continue to increase the way that our climate is. And I wonder if it would be helpful to committee to have a breakdown of that as a separate indicator. And there's sort of 2 points to that. One, it gives this committee a better idea of all the flooding incidents as a separate issue that you have to attend, and your responses and casualties, etc., to that in particular. And it would alleviate possibly some of the warning figures on the whole group there of incidents. You may not find that you have that warning figure on that particular performance indicator if it's split that way. I'm not sure. I'm just sort of throwing it open to see what possibly other members think or what the brigade or yourselves think. And I have another point that I'd like to come in, but I'd like that answered first if I could.
Yeah, I know it's a concern for my area after the happenings at the New Year, but how could you comment on that?
Well, you're quite rightly identified and understand that flooding is an increasing problem for us, but again, it's out with our hands whether the preventative measures are out with really our control. Is more the reactive response that we would provide, whether that be water rescue or to actual flooding incidents. So there is a full range of resources that we have to deal with those as a new national organisation. Whether we can break it down and whether there would be any benefit to break down the different types of incidents that we attend, I've not had the time to consider whether that would be of benefit or not, to break them down into actual water rescues, to people falling or being retrieved from the river, or whether it's actual flooding incidents per se because of environmental conditions. It's something that we can look at, but as Kate and my colleague in the police service, sometimes the data is very difficult to extrapolate, other than if you've done it. When the systems are set up, they are set up to be able to rip out a certain amount of data reasonably easily. Further definition of that or further scrutiny of that has to be, in most cases, a manual exercise. Where it could be of benefit if there was a problem at any particular quarter is that local officers could rip that information out locally for a district committee report and inform members via that avenue.
Are you okay with that, Craig?
Yes, Chair, it was just a consideration that it might give us some more information on the flooding that we have, etc., etc. But I'm happy to go with how the committee feel on that.
Yeah, Ian.
Sorry, the word flood just brought something back to mind. I understand that the Scottish Fire and Rescue Service are carrying out a review of equipment throughout the fire service area, and obviously we've got the water rescue at both Newton Stewart and Annan. Is there any danger that these would be reallocated from Annan? Do you have any information on that?
I wouldn't like, you're quite rightly identified that there is a full review of specialist appliances across the whole of Scotland and special resources across Scotland. I'm not involved in that particular aspect or review per se, so I wouldn't like to comment on what the outcomes of that may be.
Chairman, if we could come back, perhaps when it comes to the recommendation, that we could look at or add a recommendation asking that when this review has been completed, the report come back to this committee so that we could scrutinise it.
Craig?
Thank you, Chair. It's just an inquisitive question more than anything, and it would apply to both services and this committee, and possibly, hopefully, Derek as well. I'm just wondering whether the services are aware that I was told this morning that the council, and I was told this by the Coast Guard, and they were inquiring as to the use of these. I've been informed that the council hold 50 airwave radios in their possession at the Wayside Depot in Dumfries here. And I wondered if the services were aware of these, and for emergency planning or a major emergency that we may have in the region, because these radios could be of use to the services distributed through the emergency bunker and the team that would operate from there. But it's just a point that that could be a valuable asset to the Coast Guard in such instances, and because I know they're short, and I just wondered if that information is out there to the emergency services, so then they know that getting in touch with the council, they could be distributed with these to help within the rescue of whatever the incident may be.
I think that's a good point, bring down take that on board.
No, certainly sorry Chairman, that's the case. As best of my knowledge, there's a strong joint working in place, and that level of intelligence is well understood by all the partners in the major emergency scheme.
Great.
Just to come back, Chair, where the Coast Guard weren't aware of that this morning.
I think it's important that the whole resilience thing that we keep on top of. I mean, we had a horrendous situation at Kirkconnell at New Year, but I'm still not sure whether we would get an ample supply of sandbags in a hurry, because that hasn't been continued. And I think it's important that we keep on top of the community resilience to repeat the same happening again, especially with the issue with the radios and other things, that the emergency services have got all the support from the community and council that they can get, Ronnie.
Yeah, just to look, we had all the debate about the statistics, and for a demand-led service, to set a target, it's just to say, what I would like, and we tend to look at the negatives, because that's what the statistics make you do, it's the outcomes. I mean, as an individual, if I phone 999 and say, come help me, if a house is on fire, and you're there within, that's an outcome. How do we capture, you can set targets, and I know over the years on this committee and that, with road fatalities, you just need 2 or 3 crashes with multiple, and yet your statistics are through the roof. You can't legislate for that, so your targets are blown out of the water. So setting targets is fine for an operational point of view and to try and achieve something, but to me it's more about the outcomes and successful and the public's appreciation. Now, we don't seem to capture that here because I know it's called hard facts, but there is a softer side, if you like, for both services, because I'm not saying we shouldn't get this because it's good data and we need to scrutinise it, but there's always the other side of the coin, which I don't think we, this is a public document, we're in here giving it, look at that, but there's another side to it where the public, appreciate both the police and fire, maybe the fire more than the police, but that's the nature. So it's how do we capture that, Chair, and so it's meaningful. We just look at one set of raw data. There's another side that we don't appreciate or get captured, I think.
Yeah,
absolutely, wholeheartedly agree with you. Targets can lead to, they can manipulate behaviour, they can start to adversely affect behaviours, they can focus things adversely. Some targets are out with one particular agency's influence. It needs a partnership approach to actually affect a target. I agree totally, again, that it shouldn't be just about inputs, because inputs are only certain things. There should be robust analysis to ensure an evaluation. If you're going to do something, to evaluate it, is it going to produce an outcome? And then there's a joint shared ownership of any particular targets that are set, but only after a degree of an analysis and understanding of the target and what you're trying to achieve based on outcomes is actually determined. So I wholeheartedly agree with you. And you'll probably see that when the action plans that are going through to supplement the 2014 to 2017 fire local plan, that they are based on outcomes and there's no targets being set.
Nice to see somebody agreeing with you, Ronnie. Right, can we go to the recommendations? 1. Receive and scrutinise the performance of the Scottish Fire and Rescue Service, the Dumfries and Galloway service area, over the period 1st April 2013 to 31st March 2014 as detailed in draft public performance report 2013 and 14. Agreed? 2. Approve the publication of the draft public performance report 2013-14 for wider circulation to the public and to key Scottish Fire and Rescue Service stakeholders. Agreed? And we were going to put a third recommendation in there. Did we agree?
Yeah, I think following the recommendation that following the review of specialist equipment by the Scottish Fire and Rescue Service, that a report be come back to this committee showing the local implications of that review.
Are you okay with that, Claire?
Yes, yes, I've got that. To receive a report on the outcome of the Scottish Fire and Rescue Service review of specialist equipment showing local implications. Do you want anything added about targets and local data?
I was still kind of minded to give an emphasis on local targets rather than national targets. I'll bow to Jim's knowledge, if not his arithmetic, because I certainly can't work out these targets as being the 5-year averages. But I think it's just a general recommendation that the fire service, in reporting, that they give particular emphasis to their locally set targets rather than national targets, and something general like that.
I'll leave Claire to put some word into that. Are you okay with that, Claire? Members okay with that?
Just to say, Chairman, I'll pick up offline the issue regarding the Coast Guard with Councillor Peacock. Okay, I'll pick that one up. Okay.
Right, members, I've been just informed that the Bartons, well, 5 minutes ago, the Barton was about 5 minutes away. And right, so we have another item in the agenda. The members wish to carry on with the item, or okay, carry on. Thank you.
Thanks, Chair. And again, this is the quarterly report. It gives an indication of both our activity, some news about what's happening in the service, and also Q4 performance reports and statistics, and the mitigating activities or reasons why we think those performance indicators are where they're at. I would like members to note that this is probably the last time, or it is the last time, that fireworks will be presented in this format, and we will be moving to a different format for quarterly performance reporting from this quarter onwards.
You should look at the Labour group first. That's Chairman. I was going to ask the question because we were told a while back that fireworks was going to cease in this format. Colin Wallace, is it? Showed us a new sort of draft thing that's coming. What I really liked about this, and it's for the public, it goes to community councils, libraries and stuff, and it goes back to what I was saying about the softer side, you're out in the other communities. I mean, there's an open day next Saturday, weekend Saturday, at Annan. My grandson, he loves fire, he knows as he calls them, but anyway. So I'll be at that, but it shows, I mean, maybe it's different Annan because everybody that lives in Annan is a retained firefighter. But the wider public, it's the softer side, and this is sort of good stuff. I know there's costs and implications and stuff, and if the police did something similar, where your community cops are out doing stuff in the school and the academy, and I'm sure across the other parts of the region, it doesn't have to be monthly or quarterly, once a year, or just say, this is what we've been doing, because the only time you ever see yourselves, other than here, is in the papers, and it's usually something tragic or awful. So there is that softer side that you are part of the community, but get that story over. It's a PR thing, basically. And we've enjoyed this publication. We've always supported it. I know we sort of, I'm not saying we paid for it, well, I suppose we did at one time, I can't remember, when David Wynne was the chief fire officer. If there's something similar coming nationally that captures that softer side that we can put out to the public and community councils, I'd welcome that, Chair.
Alan, you got a comment?
since taking over the area and coming down from previously of covering the wider west, I've become aware that some of our officers weren't maybe empowered previously to speak directly to the media. They weren't using social media, for example Twitter accounts, to actually feed out what they're doing. Now to me that is a crucial aspect of modern organisations speaking directly to their communities about what they're involved in, what their activities are and what's going on in a timely manner as opposed to maybe 3 months behind the schedule. And it's absolutely right and great that the news stories have been out in that format previously. We are looking at a range of outlets and methods to communicate with the public about what we're actually doing. But that takes a bit of time. We need to build the capacity of our officers to carry that out and to also empower them to do it.
We obviously use a fair bit with Facebook, and we've moved on to Twitter as well to try and get them really lifetime, and it's something that we do stress, and we are trying to actually make better use of for that very reason that it's lifetime. But I think some of the points you make in terms of probably feedback we can give to area committees and this committee as well is that, and I've written, Councillor Ogilvie's softer side to remind myself that that's what I'll be looking to feedback on, because I think you're absolutely right that we do need to make more of some of the work that a lot of our community-based officers or CID officers are doing that we wouldn't naturally, that are in here, but not, try and draw that information out.
Members? Patience? Agreed. Well, I've no other business. I know, you want to go out and see this Barton thing.